Welcome everyone to today's Living Wild Fit topic call with the fabulous Ariel. We have a few housekeeping things to go over. Please have your cameras on so that Ariel can see your lovely faces when you talk to her. You will be muted. Please let the host mute and unmute you. Use the chat to speak with other participants, but please don't write messages directly to us because we're working the call and we will often miss your questions and we don't really mean to. Raise your electronic hand if you have questions and the host will get you ready and you can speak live with Ariel. If you are putting your questions in the chat, please put them for everyone to see so that everyone can benefit from your questions and we will collect them and make sure that Ariel answers them for you. And we want to use Ariel's time wisely. So if you have any questions that are technical, please reach out to support@getwildfit.com and we are always happy to help you. Our next topic call is Wednesday, May the 12th at 12 p.m. New York time. And the next check-in call is Wednesday, April the 21st at 6 p.m. New York time. It's always best if you can be on the calls, but if you cannot, don't worry. There's a replay that will be in your dashboard within 48 hours. And now we're going to turn it over to the amazing Ariel.
Thank you so much, Angela. Hello, everybody. How's everyone doing today? Good. Everyone excited to learn about ketosis? All right, I'm going to start sharing my screen. Put it into presenting mode and I just want to make sure that I can also see, maybe I can't see the chat. Everybody can see my screen? Yes, yes. Thumbs up? Yes? Okay, perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so obviously this is me. And today we are talking about how to use ketosis to your greatest advantage. So basically we wanted to have this topic today because it seems like a lot of you you're either like not clear on what ketosis is, you're not sure how to use it to your greatest advantage. It might feel a little bit elusive to you, like this weird kind of scientific concept that you don't really understand, or it might even seem frightening to you because you've heard about ketoacidosis and you don't want toxic blood. So we just thought it would be a good idea to explain what ketosis is in layman's terms and why it is a big part of spring and the benefits that it has for your body, and also how you can really maximize the benefits of ketosis for your own body, whether it is because you want more energy or you want to be burning fat more efficiently or at a higher rate. So we'll get into all that good stuff. And then of course, we're going to leave time at the end for questions. If you just want clarity on how to incorporate ketosis better into your own lifestyle. So just like, I suppose as a disclaimer, what I want to say first is that ketogenesis is the creation of ketones. It's when the body says, hey, I don't have enough sugar. So because I don't have enough sugar, I'm going to take fat and convert it into ketones and into sugar so that I can burn it as energy. Now, until this point, most of the studies around ketones and ketone creation and the process of getting into ketosis have been from the lens of fasting or because of medical intervention. So it's only with the popularity of the keto diet that studies are now starting to be funded, purely looking at ketosis from the lens of this might be a great way to help people to lose weight and to create more insulin sensitivity and so on. So because these studies are still relatively new, You know, they're still getting mixed success. Some of the studies prove that, yeah, ketosis can work long term. Others say, no, it can't. And often conventional science jumps right in and says, ha ha, see, ketosis doesn't work. But they forget that conventional diets have been studied for the last 100 years. And there's been a lot of, you know, positive findings and negative findings. So in the interest of science, let's just say that this is still a new frontier. It's still being looked at from a bunch of different angles. And what I'm going to present to you today is a little bit of science, but mostly it's from what people have discovered anecdotally from their own practice or practice with their clients and patients, and just through common sense. And really the bottom line is that we know that ketosis is a natural metabolic pathway. It's something that the body just knows how to do. If the body didn't know how to get into ketosis, many of us would go unconscious and die overnight because we wouldn't have any energy coming in to power our brain. So the body knows how to create ketones. It does it all the time. What we're talking about really here is how to do it on a longer term basis, you know, getting people in. So hopefully this is going to be good. If ever it's not good or my connection is not good, you guys can go like this. Okay, like, I can't really hear you. Cool? Yes? Everyone's busy taking notes or looking confused already. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but okay, so essentially what ketosis does, it just flips the conventional diet completely over. When we generally diet, what do? Put it into the chat. If you've ever been on a diet before, you say, okay, I'm going to eat a lot less energy. So you restrict your calories. And at the same time, you're like, I'm going to exercise a lot more because I want to burn more calories. And if we think about the body as a physical system, that makes a lot of sense, right? Because we're looking at, well, you know, I'm putting less calories in and I'm asking the body to take more calories out. So this creates a deficit. So my body must have to be burning fat. Unfortunately, our body is not just a physical system, right? It's a chemical system, and it also is an electrical system. And unfortunately, what ends up happening when we try to diet this way is the body says, there's less energy coming in. So I'm going to reduce my basal metabolic rate, which basically means I'm going to turn down my thermostat to burn energy more efficiently. So your body starts cutting off function to non-essential processes in the body. This is why if you've ever tried to cut a bunch of calories really quickly, you might notice that your hair starts falling out, your nails get a little bit weaker, you feel a lot colder, you don't have enough energy to go run and exercise. It's because your body has said, there's not enough coming in, so I've got to make some cuts. Now, at the same time that it's making those cuts and decreasing your metabolism, your body's saying, hey, there used to be a lot of food around, and now there's not that much food. So ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, starts going through the roof. And your body is just saying, hey, here's some motivation, go find more food. So you're really, really hungry, you're not eating very much. And when your willpower battery dies, and it's like, after a number of days or a couple of weeks, you are now so hungry that you just eat and eat and eat. You have maybe a binge over a few hours or over a couple of days. And it's almost like this frantic way of eating. And you think, I failed my diet, I'm so weak. But really, it's just this hormonal response to thinking that you were starving. Now, the problem with that is because your metabolism is so low, your body has your metabolism, that as your insulin goes up in response to your higher blood sugar, you then start storing all of that energy right away. So it stores up your glycogen and then it starts storing itself as fat. And this is why most people gain on average 3 pounds every single time they go on a diet. It just doesn't work this way. But when you move into ketosis, a few key things are happening. So the first thing is that we have a digestive hormone, CCK. Now, okay, I'm going to just say there's a lot of scientific words here. And I know that some of you, you're not scientists. You didn't like biology class, you didn't like chemistry. So maybe your brain is going, I don't like this. And you're starting to shut down. So before you shut down, please know that what's most important is just the concepts that I'm describing. You don't need to understand every single scientific word, and that's why I've simplified things as much as possible, okay? Okay, so essentially, fat is really satiating. It's very filling. And the science behind what makes it filling is that we have a digestive hormone that tells the brain, wow, I'm taking a long time to digest this fat, I'm not hungry. CCK, that same hormone, also slows the stomach from emptying because fat and protein take longer to break down. So again, the brain gets a little message that says, not hungry. Now, when you start to produce ketones, they also suppress ghrelin, that hunger hormone. So again, your body thinks, I'm not hungry. Leptin is going up, ghrelin is going down, all good things, right? Now, when we're in ketosis, the WILDFIT way, in WILDFIT Spring, we're also getting an abundance of fiber from all of those leafy green vegetables that we're eating. And as the fiber starts to ferment in the gut, again, that sends a chemical signal to the brain that says, we got a lot of fuel in here, boys. We're not hungry. Don't put anything else in here. So all of that, and then on top of it, because you're eating higher quality, really dense protein, and it's a little bit fattier of protein, that protein decreases blood sugar because the sugar can only go into the bloodstream very slowly. So insulin is now going down. So insulin's down, hunger is down. Your body says, hey, everything's all good. I got a lot of fuel here stored in the body, and I'm not actually hungry. So your basal metabolic rate actually goes up when you're in ketosis instead of going down, which is why many people start to feel really warm and even experience something like hot flashes when they're in ketosis. Their body is just burning energy really rapidly, and it's really excited because it has this abundant fuel source. Your body can't store much sugar, but it can store fat. If that was really confusing, this is the take home, okay? Your body basically has an energy bank. A lot of animals, like elephants, for example, they have a tough outer coat. They're very big. They can just wander around all day eating. Very few things are going to attack them. And if they're going to attack them, they're going to attack the smallest and the oldest, not the majority of the pack. So they don't really have to worry about getting eaten, so they can graze all day long. Humans, not so lucky, right? We're a smaller mammal. We have to be agile, always looking for those threats and opportunities. So we grab food when we can get it. We eat as much as possible, distending the stomach, filling it up. And then we use what we need as energy, but most of it gets stored. Now, we store some of it as glycogen in a process called glycogenesis, the creation of glycogen. And we store this glycogen, which is sugar packed tightly between water molecules in the liver and in our muscles. We can store enough glycogen for about 2,000 calories worth of activity, or 6 to 24 hours or so, okay? Now, once we top up our glycogen stores, the body goes, I still have all this energy that I need to store, but I don't have any place else to put it. So it essentially takes that glycogen and it reconstitutes it, and it makes it an even tighter, smaller, more packed unit of energy known as fat. Okay, so lipogenesis, the creation of fat. Now, fat, that's where the gold is, right? Because this energy source is unlimited. Your body can continue to put on more and more and more fat, as many of us know, right? Once the fat cells fill up, they can get bigger. And then once those fat cells get bigger, they can actually produce more fat cells. We think of fat like it's just this, this layer of balloons underneath our skin, but fat is an organ. It has different hormones, it communicates with the body, it can replicate itself. It's really fascinating. But just for the purposes here, know that your body feels good when it's burning fat because it understands I could live on this stuff for weeks or for months. So this is why your body likes to use this store of energy. Now, of course, we also want to talk about the benefits of ketosis, right? So it's not only because the body can use it as a way of getting rid of stored fat, which is why many of us like the idea of ketosis. I've got this fat on my body, I want to get rid of it quickly, so how can I burn it all of the time instead of just when I'm exercising? But it's got a lot of other benefits for our health as well. And most of this has to do with reducing insulin. Who has heard my story about little Mr. Pancreas? A good amount of people, okay? So when we talk about little Mr. Pancreas, your pancreas is just an organ in your body that is responsible for a lot of things, your digestion, namely, but also for shuttling out insulin. And insulin is the transporter that's necessary for shuttling glucose, which is the basic unit of sugar, into your cells. And if it's needing to do that all the time, it gets tired, it gets sloppy, and having too much insulin in your blood all the time actually increases inflammation. So when insulin can go down because there's not as much sugar present in the blood because we're not eating as much sugar, it's almost like this magic can happen because your pancreas actually produces a counter hormone, which is called glucagon. And when glucagon can go up, as we talked about earlier, hunger is reduced. The more glucagon we are producing, the more rapidly we can burn fat. And if we're not producing insulin for any period of time, we are able to rebalance our metabolism because the body resensitizes to insulin. Any of you have experienced this if you went through a season of spring and then you decided to break that season of spring with a piece of chocolate cake or a couple glasses of wine or something that has a lot of dense sugar. What happened? Maybe you felt a little bit dizzy, a little bit queasy, and ultimately you had to go to sleep because your body was so sensitive to that insulin. So these are the main benefits. Other benefits that can be experienced is that overall, the amount of triglycerides, which are like the little units of fat that are cycling through your bloodstream, go down. Your blood pressure also goes down. This may be because there's less insulin in your bloodstream, which means there's less inflammation, and it's also related to the triglycerides. But these are all things for most people. When we're in ketosis, it also helps to regulate our cholesterol. The same mechanism that helps us to produce ketones also helps to produce cholesterol. Cholesterol are just a unit of fat, but it's a unit of fat that's used for healing in the body. And when we're in ketosis, producing a lot of human growth hormone. And all you need to know about that is that it's a really good thing. It's what keeps us vital, keeps us youthful, creates longevity, and we produce more of it when we're in ketosis. And the main reason that ketosis is being studied is it seems like when people are burning ketones and using fat to produce sugar rather than using sugar directly, it reduces inflammation in the brain cells and also in the other nervous tissue of the body. And this is why it's been used with health conditions that are related to that kind of inflammation, like autism and epilepsy, Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, of course, we're learning now are just a more advanced and different kind of diabetes that affects the nervous tissue. So, of course, by moving into this state where insulin is reduced and inflammation is reduced, we can start to reverse the effects of these illnesses. So Some of you are glazing over. I see it in your eyes. So I want to take a second and just use a real world analogy here. All right. So who's familiar with like a basic transport chain of energy? So like oil comes out of the ground, oil is refined, oil is carried, you know, to a different refinery or where it's actually going to be utilized, and then it's burned or stored, right? Is everyone kind of familiar with how that would work? I'm just scrolling through. So you can kind of imagine it like you've got this mine of energy. So that energy needs to be mined, and that is units of potential energy, which is essentially food, okay? Now, that food, whether it's broken down into molecules of fat or it's broken down into molecules of sugar, there is a chemical process that occurs where those molecules are torn apart. And as they are torn apart, electrons, which are the little fizzy units of energy, which are zipping around in every single one of our cells, are freed. And as those electrons are freed up, they can get into basically this conveyor belt where they cycle and cycle and cycle. And as they cycle around, they go through various changes to produce energy. Okay, now the energy that we're talking about is adenosine triphosphate. And so for those of you who can see my mouse, can everyone see my mouse? Ooh, yes, maybe. So basically we have our food, we get freed electrons, and then those electrons then produce energy. So whether we are burning sugar or whether we are burning fat, it's the same process. Sometimes when you first start hearing about ketosis and moving into fat burning when you're in your challenge, it might seem like it's this weird metabolism that's untested and untethered, but your body knows how to do it. It would prefer to burn sugar because it's a more straightforward process and your body is inherently very efficient, but it can convert fat into energy just as easily as it does with sugar, okay? So this is the essential process. Now, if we want to look at it as a cyclical process, we look at how we metabolize energy in relation to how we breathe, okay? So we're breathing oxygen in, right? Everyone take a deep breath of oxygen. Oh, feels good, right? And then you immediately exhale. Now, what are you mostly exhaling? Carbon dioxide and water molecules. Now, what happens in between? In between, we create energy. We need oxygen if we're going to create energy inside of our cells to do things like move our arms and watch what I'm doing on the screen and have our brain struggle to understand what I'm talking about. And all those things require energy, right? So every single time that we breathe, we are enabling our body to produce energy. So we've eaten a meal. Whether that meal is mostly carbohydrates, which break down to sugar, or mostly fat, which break down into smaller units of fat, that all exists in the mine of food in our intestines. Then those units of food are picked up by the larger transport mechanisms. So you can think of that as like a cargo ship or a train that's carrying different units of coal or oil or whatever it is. But basically, for sugar, it's insulin. And for fat, it's fatty acid transports. Easy, right? So those are carried through the oxygenated blood and into the cells. Now, as those units of potential energy reach the cells, they need to be carried into the liquid medium of the cells in a different way. So they're reconfigured. That reconfiguration process is different for sugars than it is for fats, and it uses different proteins and different enzymes, but the end process is the same, that they get into the mitochondria of the cells. The mitochondria are the energy factories in every single one of our cells. It doesn't matter if it is a liver cell or a fat cell, a brain cell, they all have mitochondria. And it's within the mitochondria that all of these freed up electrons can now go into that conveyor belt and start producing ATP. As that ATP or energy is produced, the byproducts of that are carbon dioxide and water. And that carbon dioxide and water then exits through our breath. So anyone who's been on a call and said, oh, my energy is so low when I'm in ketosis or when I'm trying to move my body, I don't know why that is. And I'm telling you that you need to breathe more deeply. This is why. Because when you breathe more deeply, you take in more oxygen. More oxygen means more energy units transported to more of your mitochondria, which means more energy is produced. Okay? So again, super fancy chemistry chart here. All right? All you need to know about this is that ketosis happens in your liver, okay? Or rather, ketogenesis, the production of ketones happens in your liver. This is where they're produced. And your liver basically takes fatty acids and turns them into this component called acetyl-CoA. And acetyl-CoA goes into the mitochondria of the liver cells. And from there, what's really important is this little square here, the little blue square with the little curly in it. Everyone see that? So over on the right side of your screen, this here is called FOXA2. So this is forkhead box protein. Scientists are very literal. That's what it looks like, is a forkhead. So that's what it's called. But all you need to know about this little protein is the mechanism that switches it on or turns it off. So when we are producing more glucagon, which is the counter hormone to insulin, the body says, hey, I need more of this protein. And that protein is necessary in large amounts to produce ketones. So if you have too much insulin in your body because you've gotten, some sneaky sugar is making its way into your body, or you're eating too much protein, hidden sugars, all of those things are going to increase your insulin. And it all boils down to this one mechanism here, that insulin turns off the need for this protein. So if there's too much insulin in your bloodstream, you cannot create ketones. Your body says, let's produce sugar, or let's use sugar for making energy instead. So if your insulin is low enough, then glucagon can signal to this protein to say, yeah, go ahead and produce this enzyme to make ketones. And then this enzymatic activity, more science, but basically it then produces ketones. Now, in the beginning, when you start producing ketones, a lot of that is just going to be acetoacetate. That's sort of like the lazy production of ketones. It's like, the first step. And that's when you start to notice, acetone is spelled wrong. Sorry, guys. But you produce acetone and you smell it on your breath. You smell it in your sweat and in your urine. So acetone is a ketone. So if you notice it, then yes, you are in ketosis. Your body is producing ketones. Your body can also take that first ketone and turn it into BHB. Now, BHB is the beta-hydroxybutyrate, which you will see on keto websites. You will see it as a supplement. These are the exogenous ketones that you might be asked to take. Now, if you take these ketones, you're going to feel ketones in your body. It's a nice way to encourage the body to produce ketones. But on the flip side of that, if your body already has those ketones circulating, it's not going to take the fatty acids from your body and convert them into ketones, because your body creates ketones on a need to use basis. So if your body's like, hey, I'm getting kind of sleepy. The brain needs energy. Oh, I better take some fat and turn it into ketones. It will do that. But if you're supplementing your ketones, it might help you feel more energetic, but then you're not burning fat. So this is why we don't really ever encourage you to take supplemental ketones and say maybe move through a little bit of lower energy as your body is producing that acetoacetate in the beginning until your body becomes really fat adapted and starts producing that BHB for more of that even higher energy. Okay. Last bit of science, I promise. Okay. So, how do we make sugar from ketones? I feel like this is really important because I've been asked so many times, well, I've heard that the brain needs sugar in order to function, or I've heard that the heart needs sugar in order to function, or the eyes or the red blood cells. So if I'm only producing ketones, how is my brain going to work properly? Well, your body knows how to produce sugar from ketones. It knows how to do that. It'll take all of the fats that you are digesting and use the fatty acids to produce ketones, and it'll take the glycerol from those fat molecules and use them through gluconeogenesis, which is basically the creation of sugar, to make sugar. Now, it can also make sugar from amino acids and lactate in your muscles. This over here, this weird circular thing, that was my representation of skeletal muscle. So the takeaway here is, again, if you're getting too much dietary protein, and we'll speak about how much is the right amount, but if you're getting too much dietary protein, your body will create too much sugar. And as it creates too much sugar, it'll lessen the production of ketones. Now, we also want to make sure that we're getting the right amount of protein, because if we're not getting enough protein, your body will take amino acids from your muscles and break down your muscles in order to produce energy for your brain and to see and for your red blood cells, because all of those things are more important than being jacked. All right. So making sure that we have the right amount of protein so that we're giving the body what it needs to fuel the brain, but not having too much that it's going to tripwire that insulin and then stop the protein from producing ketones. Now, these two slides here, this is the last little bit of science. Now, why would we bother to produce ketones? We have this perfectly great metabolic pathway where we turn sugar into energy and we can use that energy. So why go through the trouble where we might get keto flu and we might feel a little bit sluggish, or we might get lead legs? Why would we bother? Well, it's because of the payoff. Now, the payoff, when I was talking all the way through about these ATP, these little energy units, right? When we take one molecule of sugar and we break it down, and then we break it down again, and then we break it down again in these 3 different cycles, we create more and more and more ATP, because there's more free electrons, which can then be used to make energy. But even in an ideal circumstance, one molecule of glucose can only make 38 units of energy. One molecule of fat, like a standard molecule of fat, can make 131 units of energy. That's like 2.5 times more. And this is the main reason why when people get into that really great ketone burning state where they're like fat adapted, they feel lighter, they feel brighter, their brain is working better, they have just more steady energy, or they need less sleep, because unit per unit, the body makes 2.5 times more energy burning fat than burning sugar. So that, I believe, is the big takeaway. Of course, if we're looking through, there is a lot of science, okay? There's a lot of science, there's a lot of chemistry, there's a lot of biology, but essentially the biggest take home is that Ketosis is something that your body knows how to do. It's something it does every single day. And essentially what we need to learn to do to maximize our energy is go through a few adaptations, a few little tweaks in living WILDFIT to really make ketosis work for us. Now, there's quite a number of them. Okay, there's 13. So I'm going to move through them, like I would say relatively quickly, and then we can touch on them more in questions. Does that sound good to everybody? Sorry, I haven't been checking your comments in the chat. I will look at them after this. So how to maximize your fat burning benefits. So the first thing is you need to go to bed early. You need to get a really good quality of sleep. The more deep sleep you're getting, the better, because when you're in deep sleep, you're producing more human growth hormone. When you produce more human growth hormone, you produce more ketones and you burn those ketones more effectively. So easy enough, go to bed by 10 p.m. if possible, because we tend to get into deep sleep between the hours of like 10:30 and 12:30. So if you're going to bed a lot later and getting more screen time, you're missing that prime time where you could be producing HGH. The next thing is when you wake up the next morning, have a big tall glass of water and then go for a walk. Go for a power walk with some hills, maybe a hike out in nature, and do it fasted, because this is going to allow your body to burn off any glycogen, that first way that we store energy. It's going to burn that off of your muscles and off of your liver so that your body has to tap into the deep storage of fat. Now, the next two things, this is where it gets a little bit different than during our challenge, right? In the challenge, we said never let yourself get hungry, because communicating abundance was what was most important. But now that you've been in and out of spring a couple of times, we want to really maximize the amount of fat that you can burn. And the way that we do that is by lowering insulin. The way that we lower insulin is by having less blood sugar available. And the way that we do that is by eating less frequently. So if you can keep your insulin low and not have any breakfast until like 10 a.m., sometimes even noon, depending on how comfortable you are with intermittent fasting, your insulin stays low, so your body will burn fat. Then when you open up that eating window, say it's from 10 until 6 or 12 until 6 or something like that, it's preferential to have larger meals that have a lot of energy, right? They have a lot of calories there, because we don't want your calories to drop, because then your metabolism will drop. So we want to keep those calories high. We just want those calories, or that energy coming in, to be mostly from fat and protein and leafy green vegetables. And we want to eat less often. Why do we eat less often? Put it into the chat. Keeps insulin low. And when insulin is low, glucagon can be high, which means that we produce more ketones. Yes? Now, the fifth thing, especially if we are doing that fasted intentional movement, or you're doing any kind of workout, is you need to get more sodium. I'm always telling you, right? You need more minerals. Get your minerals in your water. Take some sugar-free electrolytes. Have a magnesium salt bath. But sodium is so, so important, because in that whole chain of movement from when we breathe in oxygen to when we exhale carbon dioxide and water, that sodium helps to keep oxygen and the electrons in that conveyor belt moving smoothly, efficiently, and quickly. So without enough sodium, your body can't do that. So that's why if you have a glass of water and you haven't added any electrolytes to it or any Himalayan salt to it, and then you try to go out for a walk and you go up a hill, you might feel like your legs are lead. There's not enough salt in your system. So your body is struggling to get those electron chains to convert to energy. All right. Next one. Your first, when you first start into ketosis, so you're just starting into spring, have more fat than you think you need. A lot of us, because we have a diet mentality, we think, I want to have the minimum amount of dietary fat possible so that my body will have to burn more body fat. But basically what you're doing then is you're causing your body to almost grind to a halt. And it's like, I'm out of sugar. What do I do? Oh, now I have to start burning fat. So there's this lag time where your body needs to catch up. And in that lag time, metabolism might go down. You might get keto flu. A lot of funky things can happen. So if you start out giving your body lots and lots of fat, your body's like, oh, I got a lot of fat to burn. So it can convert to ketones more quickly and easily. Now, the next thing is, when we are moving fat into the mitochondria, okay, so they've arrived on that cargo ship, and now they have to go from the cargo ship into the cell and get to the mitochondria. They're moved from the cargo ship into the mitochondria by an amino acid called L-carnitine. L-carnitine is only present in red meat. So if you are vegan and you're not eating red meat, this might be a great opportunity to talk to your coach about supplementing with L-carnitine and CLA. Okay, so these are just supplements that are going to help your body, again, create ketones more efficiently. If you're doing that by eating red meat early in the day, then you're getting yourself off to a great start. Your body has plenty of carnitine to do what it needs to do to produce energy and burn fat. All right. Number 8, we want to be breathing really deeply when we're moving. I've already talked about this, but just to reiterate how important it is, when we are getting lots of oxygen, that transport chain can happen really smoothly. So make sure that when you are exercising, if you're working out, if you're lifting weights, you're breathing a lot of oxygen. We cannot produce fat, we cannot burn fat in an anaerobic environment. Anaerobic means without air. So this is really crucial. So if you ever feel lead legs, if you're feeling brain fog or anything like that when you're in spring, this probably has a lot to do with it. So just pause and do your 5-5-5 breath, and that's going to turn things around for you. Now, number 9 is, if you're feeling up to it, if you're, category 2, almost category 1, if you're category 1, even if you're category 3 and you've noticed that your energy is a lot better, your inflammation is a lot lower, and you just feel like you could be doing some weightlifting, it's a nice time to start experimenting with that. Because when we lift up heavy things within reason, right? Okay, so lift responsibly. But even if this is like lifting your kids multiple times a day, you're boosting your human growth hormone, like we talked about at the very start. Human growth hormone means more fat burning. And we talked about this one too, but again, just to revisit, keeping protein within a range that is enough so that we're not burning, we're not creating sugar from our muscles, but not too much that we're raising insulin. So how much? 3 palm-sized servings is pretty much enough a day, as long as it's high quality protein. So like protein powders, those are low quality protein because your body can't assimilate a lot of that protein. So make sure that it's a really high quality, that it has some fat in there with it, because that is going to give your body what it needs to produce energy. Now, these last 3 are really specific to women. So first of all, when you plan on going into spring, start reducing your carbohydrates gradually. We do this within the challenge, right? First, we take a break from refined sugar, and then we take a break from those grains and dairy and so on, and then processed foods. So we want to kind of do the same thing in a shorter version in Living WILDFIT. So whether this is a few days of transition from summer into spring, or maybe giving yourself a week to gradually reduce the amount of carbohydrates, this communicates certainty to your body. So it's going to be more happy about transitioning into ketosis. The next thing is we want the first meal of the day to be based in protein and fat. We, in other calls, we've talked about the fact that the female body is more sensitive, and we are more sensitive and we carry more fat because our biology is always geared towards making humans. Female body is a miraculous thing. We produce life. And in order to do so, we need to store more resources on the body. So if you were to go into spring without any notice and cut your carbohydrates, tongue twisters, and also simultaneously reduce the amount of energy that you're taking in, your body's going to freak out. Your cortisol will go through the roof. And as that happens, your body will become resentful of you asking it to burn fat, and it won't do it. It will instead just reduce your metabolism. So by giving your body adequate protein and fat early in the day, you're saying, look, you have everything necessary to make babies if you want to make babies. So now you can relax. And that cortisol, which has spiked at 8 o'clock in the morning just to wake you up, as it always does, can then safely go down. Now, the very last thing is that when you do get cravings, and this does apply somewhat to men as well, but mostly to females, when you get cravings, eat more fat. Sometimes we can think, oh, I'm craving, I'm craving something. What am I craving? Oh, I'm craving chocolate. That means I'm not getting enough carbohydrates. So I should eat a lot of carbohydrates. Really, what needs to be done instead is just eating more fat, because again, you're communicating there's ample energy here. We got the big old bank of gold that's just ready there for you to burn. And the body likes that. So if you're getting some cravings, increasing your fat by a couple of tablespoons of oil a day can be enough for your body to just, whew, okay, I'm okay, everything's fine. And the last thing that maybe I should have put on here, it's just that if you're a female and you've been in deep spring and you feel like you've been pushing yourself and it's not working for you, that maybe you just need to go harder. Maybe you just need to eat less. It's probably the opposite. Your body probably wants more carbohydrates. So you might actually eat more middle foods to give your body just a slight, amount of carbohydrates more, particularly in the evening. And that way your body can use those carbohydrates to produce energy overnight, to produce hormones overnight, to produce energy overnight, and do all the things that the miraculous female body knows how to do. Okay. So that is essentially what ketosis is, why we want to get there, and how we can get there more easily. That was a lot of information in a very short period of time. So I want to congratulate all of you for opening your brain and letting all that information seep in. You are going to get those notes, okay? So you're welcome to save them and go through that checklist and really optimize your fat burning capacity. And now let's really get into the, well, what if I'm working out more, or what if I'm pregnant, or what if I'm doing all these things already and it's still not working for me? So let's get into the questions so that we can figure out how to make this work for your particular body. Sound good? Excellent, guys. All right, so Dennis, I see your hand up first. I'm going to go over to you.
Hello. My question is about the lifting heavy things and just muscle building in this process, because I hear a lot from people that ketosis is not a good place to be if you're trying to build muscle. Why is that? Because it seems like with all this information that the body would have everything it needs to do that, especially with the human growth hormone.
Absolutely. So your body does have everything that it needs. There are many people who have built a lot of muscle cycling in and out of ketosis, but just like being in ketosis helps you burn fat more efficiently and more quickly, being in sugar burning metabolism helps you build muscle more quickly, because we need both carbohydrates and protein to synthesize new muscle. So if you're giving your body more carbohydrates, it can build more muscle more quickly. So short answer to your question, being in sugar burning metabolism is the best way to produce more muscle more quickly. And this is where you can start to produce a hybridized season. So you're kind of living in spring as your base season and you're operating from ketosis. But then when you know that you have a workout coming out and you want to be lifting things to the point that you're wearing your muscles out or hurting their self-esteem, as Eric likes to say, and then rebuilding them, you might eat more carbohydrates before that workout so your body can build up glycogen. And then your body will use that glycogen to build new muscle, synthesize that muscle. And once it's out of that glycogen after 6 to 24 hours, it will then start burning fat again. So kind of as I said at the beginning of the call, our bodies are always moving and flowing in between these two metabolic pathways, just naturally. And we do it every time we go for a fasted walk, essentially, or that we go to sleep if we haven't eaten since like 6 p.m. the night before. So really what we want to start thinking about now that we're living WILDFIT is how can we make it work for us? So for someone who's trying to build, that might mean strategically placing your carbohydrates around your workouts.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Kathleen.
Yeah, me?
Yes, you.
This is Kathleen. Okay. Well, my question is, I was, I've been kind of struggling with some high LDL levels, and my doctor recommended a Mediterranean diet. And one thing just that I have been doing, and one of the part of that is a glass of red wine a day. So I have been having a glass of red wine at night. It's Pinot Noir, it's not, doesn't have much sugar in it, but I'm wondering how that might affect ketosis. If it.
Okay. So if we go back to that bank analogy, so depending on what you're doing in the day, right? How active you are, you're relatively active, right? So your body's burning a higher amount of energy. Your basal metabolic rate is going to be higher. So you might burn through the energy that's consumed with that wine without storing it as glycogen. But depending on what you've eaten in your Mediterranean meal, you might have a good amount of energy that gets stored as glycogen, and then your body will have to burn through that glycogen first, which takes 6 to 24 hours, depending, before it can start trying to burn ketones. Now, the other thing to mention there, Eric has said it repeatedly, and I think that it's a good thing to mention, is that we're either communicating chemically to our body that it's springtime, it's time to shed fat, or it's fall, it's time to save fat for winter. And from Eric's point of view, it's a lot better to have a bottle of wine in one night and communicate one day of the week that we're going into winter than have a small amount of sugar every single day, which communicates overall that you're going into winter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I've been kind of trying to combine it all, and it's a little confusing. But,
Absolutely. And I
yeah.
think we're all going to do that. It's just a matter of tweaking things and finding things to make it work for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to go to Imaria.
Hi, Ariel, good to see you.
You
So
too.
basically, I have two questions. So the first one is similar to Danny's question. So while we are in ketosis, I know that the energy is higher. So my question is why for bodybuilders, we need to have carbs, I mean, before going to the gym. So I don't fully understand if the energy is higher, what I need those carbs for. Is because I get the energy quicker or something like that with the carbs?
It comes mostly back down to the, how energy is metabolized and that idea of the oxygen cycling into carbon dioxide and water. So if a bodybuilder is doing a lot of heavy lifting, you might be one or you've seen one. You're kind of like, right? So you're kind of taking in some oxygen, but then you're depriving your body of oxygen at the moment that you're putting in force. And if we want to actually be efficient in ketosis, it would be the opposite. We go, and that's really difficult to inhale and make sure that your abdomen is tight so that you don't get, some organs popping out or something like that, right? You don't want to give yourself a hernia. So it's kind of a matter of that, the way that we're using oxygen in order to produce energy. And then it's also a matter of kind of like that build up and tear down process. So bodybuilders are looking to build more muscle. So if we're building more muscle, fall, where we're taking in lots of carbohydrates, that's the building season, even if it's a very short season of a few hours, because then we build up that glycogen, and that glycogen can easily be converted into muscle. Whereas if we are like you might have a lot of energy in ketosis, and that's why you would do really well at a Pilates workout or, like a nice flow yoga class, swimming, something like that, where it's very aerobic and you're using your body weight. But when you switch to really consistently needing to lift heavy things multiple times, and you're looking to build rather than maintain, it gets a little bit tricky, and you do need to have the sugar present.
Yeah, so how much carbs do I need just to last for the workout session and not much longer than that?
That is more of like talking to a coach to learn about your specifics. Like, these are the workouts that I'm doing. This is the amount of energy that I'm looking to burn. This is the amount of muscle that I'm looking to produce. Like, looking at all of those logistics is really important to give you a logistical answer with regards to how many you need. A really simple thing to do is download an app that can support you. So it might be like a keto calculator if you want to try to be working out, for the most part, having spring as your base season, and then just doing some carb loading before your workouts. Because that way it can tell you, this kind of workout uses this much energy, so you need this much energy, and therefore you should be eating this much. And after you can conceptualize it, then you just start to do it naturally. But a tool like that is a really good way to just understand it a little bit better for your body and your needs.
Okay, perfect. And my last question is, I used to do hot yoga and I pulled the hamstring doing hot yoga. So what do you recommend me that I should be eating to, recover the muscle and yeah.
So muscle recovery, you need some really great anti-inflammatory foods. So things like ginger and turmeric would be a really good idea. Bone broth, if possible. so that you're lubricating the tissue and the surrounding joints and things like that. A lot of good quality protein, because you need protein to build muscle. Season is not really as important, but overall, I would say spring is a good season, because that's when your human growth hormone is going to be higher. So you're probably going to be able to heal much more quickly.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to go one more question because Yoke has her hand up. I just want to make sure we have a good variety of questions.
Thank you. So my question is about the state of ketosis. How long should one be in it? For me, like I stay in sort of like a mild spring, like 5 days a week, and then 2 days a week I eat some fruit, but I'm not sure if that's sort of disturbing the flow.
I don't think that would be disturbing the flow. This is where it comes down to, how do you feel, right? How do you feel? How does that work for you? If anyone is trying that sort, like if you're doing the week where you're in spring and then you transition into a summer or fall on the weekend, for some people that creates more variety. They feel more abundance. They feel it's more sustainable. So it's better for the mental and emotional health. However, if you feel like, yeah, you know, on Saturday, I'm kind of sluggish, and then on Monday and Tuesday, I'm also kind of sluggish, it means that your body is still not fat adapted yet. So you maybe want to lengthen out those seasons so that you're spending less time in that sort of not optimal state. So then it might be like, well, I'm spending 2 weeks in spring, and then I have a week in summer, and then 2 weeks in spring. So it really just depends on the feedback that your body is giving you in order to decide what's optimal. And if you don't know if something is optimal, the only way that you will know if something else works is to try it for a few weeks and then see.
Cool. That's clear. Thank you. And can you name a few healthy carbohydrate foods?
So our healthy carbohydrate foods are a lot of the vegetables that we're eating, and then like the fruit that we're eating. And, you know, nuts and seeds also have a fair amount of carbohydrates in them. They have a lot of protein and fat, but they also have some carbohydrates. And those are all of our functional foods that are carbs. And then if we want to look at some of the not so supportive, not so functional carbohydrates, that's where we would get into grains. And, you know, kind of at the least functional is the refined sugar. And if we take what we've just learned and apply it, we know that refined sugars are so ineffective for energy production because we're going to burn through them really quickly. Our insulin is going to shoot through the roof. As our insulin shoots through the roof, the body's going to hear, hey, I'm really hungry. And that's kind of the breadbasket story, which Eric has told, right? The more sugar that you eat, the higher your insulin goes. The higher your insulin is, the more you're hungry. And then you basically get into this cycle where your body is storing all of this energy, first as glycogen and then as fat. And most of us, we want to be doing the opposite. We want to be using our energy stores rather than creating them. So that's why we always say, you know, it's, if you're looking for optimal health and you're always looking to maintain body composition or even make your body composition a little bit smaller, that's where we always want to look at the supportive carbohydrates.
And oats?
So, great question.
Is that supportive?
Oats are a grain. So those would be kind of, those are unsupportive. But that's where we come back to our food categories and really following our food timeline. So cool. Using the tools that you have and figuring out, is this a food that works for me or not? And how often do I want to eat it?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Does everyone, I just want to see, does everyone feel a little bit better about ketosis? Do you have a slightly better understanding of what we're doing and why we're doing it? Is everybody happy that they have a list that they can move through to see tweaks of how to optimize their fat burning? Good, good, good. Okay. So wonderful to see you all as always. I'm going to put my slides into the group. As always, keep these with you and use them for your own benefit rather than sharing them. That would be wonderful. And if you have any questions, you can put them underneath those slides so we can continue the conversation in the Living Wild Fit Facebook group. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you next time and in our group. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you so
Ariel.
much.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.